Meanwhile, on the eve of Israel's Memorial Day, the Hostages Families Forum is dedicating today's rally to the families of the 38 murdered individuals whose bodies are being held captive by Hamas in Gaza. Demonstrations like this one are taking place weekly in the country, asking the government to prioritize the release of hostages over operations in Gaza. Joining me now, two members, family members of those Israeli hostages, Jonathan Dekel-Chen and his son, Sikri Dekel-Chen, is a Hamas hostage, and Daniel Lifshitz, his grandfather, Oped's 84th birthday today, in captivity. He's been in captivity since October 7th. Thank you both for being here so much. I just want to begin with the fact that you have a great-grandfather celebrating his 84th birthday in captivity, being held by Hamas. That is really just a stunning thing.
That is completely devastating, and I never thought we will come to this day that a great-grandfather, the only great-grandfather held hostage in the world, my grandfather, who fought all his life for peace and for justice, will be for almost 220 days held hostage in Gaza with no conditions. And I tell you, in that age, so long, is really almost feeling hopeless. But then you just spoke about all the murdered ones, and 10 of them are from Kibbutz Nir Oz. For us, 36 from Kibbutz Nir Oz are still held hostage in Gaza, which is a huge number. One of them is Sagi, which is one of my best friends from the kibbutz, from the same group, the guy who taught us baseball on the grass of the kibbutz. I tell you, it's a very hard day for me. I didn't think it will be so difficult, but it's very difficult for me to function today. I think that my grandfather is celebrating. There is no celebration on that of his birthday in Gaza today, in May 11th.
You know, when you hear the Biden administration cautioning Israel against a large-scale ground operation, obviously there's been a lot of concern raised about the plight of Palestinians in Gaza and the famine that they're facing. But at the same time, you have 4 Hamas battalions there continuing to hold hostages and use human shields. So when you hear the administration publicly telling Israel to dial back, and you're not hearing that quite as much as public calls for Hamas to release the hostages, how is that digested among your families? How do you respond to that? How do you feel about that when you're watching this public messaging that seems to be dedicated more toward Israel than to Hamas?
And we know that the end of the war is downriver to the release of the hostages. I mean, if tomorrow there will be the agreement for release all the hostages, there will be no Rafah, no more war. And of course, I would prefer everyone to sit on the negotiation table without fighting. But, you know, sometime in the Middle East, the negotiations are under fire. We saw Hamas shooting the rockets on Kerem Shalom, a devastating moment when a few soldiers died. And then a few days after, they came to say yes on the agreement. I hope from the other side, now it's kind of a pressure that will very soon, and I hopefully just after Independence Day, will bring an agreement. I think what is important is that all the parties will negotiate on the table, and will not go off of it until they get an agreement. Those people are dying every day. We just heard another one today. So really, there is nothing else to do except getting into the negotiation table and make a fair deal for everyone. The US have to press for a fair deal for everyone and come to an agreement as fast as possible, because for me, in the humanitarian part, we are losing everyone, and everyone are humanitarian now.
Jonathan, I want to ask you, when you hear the Biden administration saying that they would approve of a small-scale operation that does very specific things like target Hamas leaders and try to prevent weapons from being smuggled in to Gaza via its border with Egypt, and these sort of pie-in-the-sky ideas about how this might be effective in eradicating the terrorist threat that's posed by Hamas. You know this area well. Is that going to be effective in achieving the outcome of bringing these hostages home? I mean, it's been months now.
Yes, it has. Thank you for having us on. You're right. I've lived on the border with Gaza my entire adult life. I cannot say for sure whether this act or that act is going to move things forward or not. I think we have to accept certain facts. Fact number one is that friends can disagree. And in this case, there seems to be a disagreement around how to go into Rafah between the Biden administration and Israel. That being said, and I'm a US citizen and have been really in steady contact with the Biden administration and with Congress, what President Biden says is true. The administration's support for Israel, to its own political detriment, has been ironclad. And the Biden administration has been clear with Israel now for weeks, if not months, that full-scale invasion into Rafah, full of civilians, is unacceptable. Whether our own government, Israel, wants to listen to that is another question. As far as the hostages are concerned, I think any level-headed person understands, as well as military people. I was in the army most of my life in Israel. The only way the hostages are coming out alive, those who might still be alive, including my son Sagi and Daniel's grandfather, the only way they're coming out alive is through some sort of negotiated agreement. Military action on its own will only get them killed because of the nature of Hamas, that looks to martyr. It doesn't look to save lives. It looks to martyr lives, Israeli lives, and particularly Palestinian lives. So all parties involved of good faith, including the Israeli government, have to be totally committed to this idea of negotiations in order to get people home, those who are alive, and bring back those people. And again, there are 10 of them that are, Daniel grew up around them. I raised some of them that were murdered, and their bodies are being held, and we want them to come home for proper burial. So as far as the Biden administration is concerned and the hostages, I would say that it's much more subtle than is currently certainly being presented by the Israeli government. Their resistance. They have not told Israel not to go into Rafah. They've told Israel that there should by no means be a repeat of large-scale civilian casualties, and the vast majority of the Israeli population agrees with that.
It is a heart-wrenching situation. My heart goes out to you, Jonathan, and your son, and Daniel, you and your grandfather, and all the families affected by this horrible thing that is happening. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Hope to have you back again soon.